Jesus now. Come as you are. Come to Jesus as you are. Come as you are. Come to Jesus as you are. Come to Jesus as you are. He's waiting for you. Give him your life now. Come to Jesus as you are. He's waiting for you. Give him your life now. As you are, he's waiting. Give him your life. As you are, my Savior is waiting. Give him your life now. Come on to Jesus. As you are, he's waiting. Now is the perfect time to give him. You are. Come to Jesus. As you are, he's waiting. Give him your life. You ought to say yes. Sing yes. Sing yes. Sing yes. Sing yes. Yes, I'm coming to you, Jesus. Yes, I surrender my will for yours. Yes, I will obey your word. Oh, yes. I will say yes to everything that you tell me. I will do your will, Lord. Yeah. Oh, come as you are. Come as you are. Come to Jesus. You can come weary, wounded, battered and tired. Come as you are. Come to Jesus. Oh, as you are. If you're going to come to Jesus, you ought to lift your hands and tell him, I'm coming to you. Come on, lift your hands and tell him, I'm coming to you. Just as I am, I'm coming to you. I've been broken, but I'm coming.
Hello, my name is Melinda, and I'm the member at large. I want to take a moment to extend a very warm welcome to everyone in and on our Zoom visiting with us. I hope this discussion helps us to understand or see why the youth and young adults are leaving the AME Church, and we find ways to keep them involved. Welcome to I'm Speaking. Do you hear me?
Good afternoon, saints of God, and welcome to this momentous occasion. To our conference president, Sister Latanya Germany, our first vice president, Sister Veda Shelton, second vice president, Donna Young, third vice president, Sister Daryl Jones, member at large, Sister Melissa Robinson, our conference YPD director, Sister Mary Ragland, and to all my missionary saints and friends, welcome. It gives me great joy to be here and to open our meeting with a short devotion. Let us pray. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who has brought us thus far on the way, thou who has by thy mount keep us into your light, keep us forever, is our prayer. And this we pray. Amen. Our scripture for today is 1 Corinthians 13:13. And now abide faith, love, hope, these three, but the greatest of these is love. And I'd like to read it from the Message translation. It says, but right now, until that completeness, we have three things to do to lead us towards consummation. Trust steadily in God, hope unswervingly, love extravagantly, and the best of these is love. So, my sisters and friends, as we move into our panel discussion, it is my prayer that as we close, we will end with a deeper love for one another, and that our younger brothers and sisters will know that they are loved. But as a word of encouragement, I looked it up from the Pew Research Foundation, and they say every major denomination is seeing the same thing. The 20s and 30s are missing in action. Yet we must reach out in love and openness and a willingness to change. So, as they say, I'm speaking. Do you hear me? We'll close with a line from Love Lifted Me. Love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me, it was love that lifted me, love that lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me. God bless you. Amen.
I will be introducing our moderator for this afternoon. Our moderator is Sister Katina Whitlock. She is a native of Louisville, Kentucky, and a lifetime member of the AME Church. Over the years, she has served in local, area, conference, district, and connectional leadership positions. Katina had the opportunity to serve as a member of the Episcopal Committee and the Women's Missionary Society Supervisors Advisory Council. Professionally, she is an executive for GE Appliances, a hot air company leading the company's national philanthropy and community engagement pillar. Katina is a member of Quinn Chapel AME Church in Louisville, Kentucky, where she serves as a steward and leads the media ministry. The next voice you will hear will be that of our moderator, Sister Katina Whitlock.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Veda, for the introduction. I am excited to participate and facilitate this conversation today. It's a conversation, as Evangelist Bean just said, that is happening across the globe, across denominations. It's a conversation that we've been having for quite some time. Why are young adults, and specifically millennials, leaving the church? To offer their contribution to the conversation and suggestions towards solutions are the panelists who will join us today. So panelists, if you would please turn your cameras on, I will now introduce our panelists. Our first panelist is Ms. Kendra Golphin. Kendra Diane Golphin is 35 years old. She is a liturgical dancer, choreographer, director, author, and daughter of an AME pastor who was born and raised in the 13th Episcopal District. Kendra knows she has been purposed to create dance that influences and orchestrates healing, deliverance, and encouragement, reaching the hearts and minds of all people. In addition to worshiping through dance, Kendra is a grant writer. She offers her grant support and business writing services throughout Kentucky and Tennessee. Please welcome Kendra Diane Golphin. Rochelle Owsley. Rochelle is a motivational speaker and fifth generation born, bred, and raised AME. She is committed with vision and service. Rochelle's held many positions throughout the church and is the former president of the 13th Episcopal District YPD and local missionary president at St. Paul AME Church in Versailles, Kentucky. She is also the recipient of numerous awards for essays, oratorical contests, and scholarships from the AME Church. Rochelle has earned a BA in Political Science from Fisk University and a Master of Science in Integrated Marketing Communications from Northwestern University. Please welcome Rochelle Owsley. Our next panelist is Dynasty Dawson. Dynasty, age 32, is a lifelong member of the AME Church. She transferred from the 11th district to the 13th district when she was 20 years old. She too is known for her liturgical dance throughout the AME Church. She is currently a member of St. Matthew's AME Church in Midway, Kentucky. She is the former member at large for Kentucky Conference WMS and currently holds the office of Assistant Recording Secretary. Dynasty is a graduate of Kentucky State University, where she earned a Bachelor of Science and degree in psychology. She is the mother of 2 children and is employed by the VA Medical Center in Lexington, Kentucky. Please welcome Dynasty. Ms. Erica Austin. Erica is a native of Springfield, Illinois. She currently works at Southern Illinois University in the School of Medicine as a Deputy Director in the Office of Community Care. In October of 2019, she decided to take a leap of faith and jump to do what God has been telling her to do for years. Erica started a youth program titled LYNC, Leading Youth and Networking Communities. Erica holds an Associate of Arts degree in Social Sciences, a Bachelor of Arts degree in Sociology, a Master of Arts degree in Human Services, and is currently pursuing her doctoral degree in Higher Education Administration. Erica is a member of Faith Temple AME Church in Springfield, Illinois, and has been active in every level of the AME Church. And our final panelist is Ms. Dinah Johnson. Dinah Johnson is a member of St. Paul AME Church in Lexington, Kentucky, where she is the church school superintendent and Christian education director. She was married to a Christian Methodist Episcopal pastor for 14 years and is the mother of 2 children. Following her divorce, she attended an AME church for 8 years before officially joining the Zion and officially becoming a member of the church. Please welcome all of our panelists. So today's discussion, as we talked, please feel free to unmute your mics when I call your name so that you can answer the questions. For all of our viewers, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. We will try to answer your questions. If you're watching on Facebook and YouTube, please put your questions there as well. But we have prepared a series of topics that we wanted our panelists to discuss. And so the very first question is simple. Why do you all think the young people are leaving the church? So Kendra, we'll start with you.
Why do I think young people are leaving the church? Short answer, young people are leaving the church because it's no longer serving them in its current state. What worked for our parents, grandparents, and generations before us doesn't really work for us. I feel when we say that though, people only hear it doesn't work and they kind of let their emotions carry them the rest of the way. I've been called anti-AME, anti-traditional before, and it hurts and it sucks because on one hand, I'm like, I love the AME church with everything in me. It made me who I am today. So to make people feel, especially our generation, make us feel like that's not what we want or it doesn't work, it drifts us, it pushes us farther apart. Sorry. I think it's important for everybody to understand, especially generations before us, that we hold our grocery stores to higher standards than we hold our churches. You wouldn't necessarily shop at a store every time, like Kroger could be your store, but it's because of the experience and what it offered you. And I feel like our generation, we're just bold enough to say it. Like, this doesn't work for us, so I'm going to figure out what does. Not necessarily saying that everything is wrong, it just doesn't work for us. So we're more bold enough to walk away from what we've always known and not necessarily hold on to it just because that's the only thing we know.
Thank you, Kendra. Rochelle, will you offer your commentary on why you think the young adults are leaving the church?
Sure. I think if you go back to Richard Allen, he was an innovator. And so during his time period, he was able to reflect on the community, what we needed as a people, and to create and provide that entity, which was the AME Church. As years have passed and decades gone by, I think we've forgotten the part that we are innovators. And so that's the part that has been a disconnect, is that we've gotten caught up in tradition. This was the way it was founded. This is what they did, as opposed to bring it on up to the future to meet the today's needs. And so I think that there is a disconnect. I agree with Kendra. Millennials are just different. They move different. And so they are the show me right now. What is it? And so, if our church is not proactive in, Black Lives Matter, if our church is not proactive in leading the way, that is what the AME Church stood for. We were the leader among all Black churches. That's the disconnect, because they don't have the respect for the AME Church that it once had.
Sister Dynasty?
I would agree with Kendra and Rochelle as far as why the young people are leaving the church. Also, I would also like to add that a lot of people don't want change. They don't want to see the new ideas that the young people are coming up with or want to add to the church. And so it's making it hard for the young people to want to interact or want to add to the church when their ideas are not being brought forth.
And Erica?
I will agree with what everyone has said thus far. Young people's voices are just not being heard. Point blank, period. And honestly, there's a lot of double standards within the church. We're taught to be brave and stand up for what we want and speak out. However, when that is done, then we're looked at as disrespectful. We're looked at as, they just don't want to be here. Oh, how dare they? But the church were the ones who taught us to use our voices. And when we use our voices, then it comes back on us. There's a lot of disrespect that's going on in the church. And young people are just going to go somewhere where they're respected for who they are, for utilizing their voices and their gifts that they have to bring. Like Kendra said, millennials are a different time. We're a different time. So I remember when I was growing up in the church, we will always hold workshops for the older generation, if I may, about how to use your cell phone, how to use your computers. Nobody wanted those workshops because it was nonsense. Now look at us now, we're in COVID and we have to use those ways to understand what's going on. So, if you listen to this, take time to listen to the young people, they do have good ideas. If we had stopped to look, back then about the cell phones and the computers, we'll maybe more apt to use that for our services versus have to do phone conference church, just different things like that. We want to be heard. And that's what's missing. Our voices are not being heard, but when they are heard, we're disrespectful.
Sister Dinah, can you weigh in as well?
In talking with my children and their friends, my coworkers and other people, one of the comments that kept coming up was that church in and of itself was uninspiring, it was boring, it was too legalistic, there's too much hypocrisy. They even said that the church is the only place that they can walk into at the age of 40 and still feel like they're 10, because they're still being treated like they're 10 years old. And so in addition to what everybody else has said, those are the things that I heard over and over just in talking to and interacting with this age group.
Thank you. And, it's funny that you mentioned that, because one of the things that, as we were, preparing for this discussion, and I think it's a conversation that all of us have on a regular basis, right? Is when are you no longer a young adult? Because, as I look through everyone's, bios and we introduced all of our panelists, right? These are adult women. These are adult women who have, multiple degrees, have professions. Some of you all have families. And so what is the qualification? Because everyone in your workplace, right, as the deputy director, as the manager, as the chief, you are an adult. So how do you all of a sudden become that young adult again and when you enter into the church house? And is that part of it? And so my question with you, the follow-up to that is, like, how does that, so we talked a lot about feelings, right? And so I think it's a generational issue as well. So generations before us provided us opportunities and open doors so that we were able to achieve those degrees and achieve those experiences at a different age and a different level than what some of them may have. So I think our experiences at 22 and 30 and 32 and 40 are drastically different. So can you talk about, like, how does the church fully utilize the experiences that you have so that you can contribute to the church the same way that you're able to contribute professionally outside of the church? Rochelle, would you mind starting off with your feedback in that regard?
Sure. Could you clarify that question again?
Sure. So you work at a university, right? So you are a professional at the university. Have you been able to utilize your professional skills and your academic training fully and holistically in the church?
Absolutely. I am a product of the AME Church. Everything that I am is because of it. There is no other institution in America, any Black church, I would even put it up against a white, that trains their youth like the AME Church. They do an excellent job. And that's really one of our benefits that we fail to communicate to those that we want to recruit. But I definitely think I have been very fortunate in whether it's the motivational speaking. It started in the AME Church and it was a gift, and they nurtured it and gave me opportunities. With being a grant writer, I've been able to write grants and help our churches, create additional programming. And so I don't think it's have I been able to use my gifts and talents to the AME Church. I think that part is acceptable. And I would say that I have been very fortunate to be able to use my gifts and talents. But as a motivational speaker, I guess as this Zoom workshop has come up, I listened to a speech I gave 10 years ago. And in that speech, I was saying, if the AME Church does not change, we are going to lose because we are not catering to the needs of the people in today's society. So I think we can give all of our gifts and talents back to the church, but if we don't use our ministry as a tool to recruit, we will continue to lose membership.
So Erica, you got excited when I mentioned that. So if you would mind sharing your feedback in that regard.
I think it's yes and no. Sister Rochelle talked about, as young people, and I was YPD all of my life. Yes, I was trained on how to public speak. Yes, I was trained on how to do certain things within, not even church, the society, to make me who I am today. However, when I got old enough to start utilizing those skills and I went away to college and I came back, there was no room for that. It was, you go be an usher. It was, you go be a host. Now, mind you, I went up to college. I'm a deputy director at my job. I have all these different talents, but in the church, I was still looked on as that 10-year-old girl who has no voice. So in one aspect, as I was taught in the church on how to be productive, how to be a productive citizen, when it comes to actually, utilizing my gifts within the church, no. It's absolutely, now local church, yes. I think in local church, I was absolutely able to utilize my gifts how I wanted to use them. And I had a receptive pastor who, loved everything that we did. When you go up into the chains of the district and connectional area, that is when things begin to change and people do not respect the gifts that you have. So it is hard because you're like, hey, I went to school, I manage a multi-billion company, and I can't even manage the $1,000 church offering we got. That is absolutely no sense to me. And we got to do better. We have to utilize what we have. Because as Sister Rochelle, if we don't, we are going to be that dying church that everyone has always talked about as we were growing up. That has not changed. Since I was little, people were saying, oh, you're the dying church. Well, it's actually happening, you all, because we're not utilizing the gifts and talents that we have in our church.
Thank you. Dynasty, can you weigh in?
I think they kind of pretty much said the gist of things, so I actually don't have anything to weigh in on this one.
Okay, Kendra?
I will say that, like, this is the question that I talk about a lot, and it's cross-denominational, especially for people who grew up in the church. Like, if you know me, you know my parents. And it doesn't matter if it's a local church, a district church, or on a connection level. At some point, you know my parents. And so being an adult and walking into it, I'm Kendra. Yes, I'm Kendra Goffin. I'll always be Kendra Goffin. But it's really hard for people to kind of separate and accept the fact that, yes, I watched her grow up. And yes, I remember her when she was young and in YPD. But at some point, it has to come like a breaking point where you're like, she's still an adult and she has a lot to offer just standing in her own right. And I don't think that translates very well. I remember growing up, we always just talked about how the AME Church was one church who trained their young adults exceptionally well. We were trained to be amazing people in and outside of the church. I think where the ball drops is like when I turned 18, it was kind of like, hey, go be a missionary with your mom. And I love my mother and I love my grandmother and I love all the women who came before us. But at 18 years old, fresh out of high school, that's not where we needed to be. And on the other hand, you have people saying, well, whatever it is, go create it. And it's like, it's cool to have the opportunity and the space to create something, but it's kind of hard to tell somebody to, hey, go build a house when all I know is I need a house, but I don't necessarily know how to start. And so it was kind of like when we turned 18, there was really no place to go. I know some of the larger churches had a RAAC and things like that, but you have to think across the board. Everybody didn't have the luxury of having a RAAC and kind of somebody to catch us, because you've got to think, as YPDers, we had a very structured youth group. Like YPD was very like, from the time you were born to the time you turned 18, we had a very structured and organized youth group. And then we became 18, it was kind of like, hey, very, very open. So we kind of go away and become adults and grow into our own. And then the first thing we do is we come back home and it feels like, well, we're not really welcome here because everybody kind of sees us as these children. It's like, no, we went away. Everybody's gotten degrees and life experience. And it puts us on the same playing field as the people that raised us, so to speak. And it kind of just makes us feel like, well, if I can't be an adult, I'm going to go somewhere where I can be an adult.
I agree. And I think if I can just interject for a minute, I see a lot of people coming through the chat talking about mentoring. And I think that's where it starts. I think, when you're young and you come back and you're full of energy and you want to do things in the church, identifying, hey, I'd like to work on the financial committee. And the financial committee being open to having that young person shadow and learn. I'm interested in working with young people, whoever the director is, having that young person shadow and learn how to do it. I think having them be accepted, that's very important for young people. So allowing them the opportunity to play a major role, to learn from the best, that's really how you bridge that gap. So that the information, all the things that you've learned in the position, that they don't just die with you when you die, that you've actually prepared the next generation to continue the torch. And so I definitely think that starts with just embracing them, accepting them for who they are, and making them feel loved and a part of what we're trying to do to move our mission forward.
Thank you. And Sister Dinah, I wanted to follow up with you because your experience is different, because you didn't grow up AME, and then you became a CME pastor's wife with children and then joined the AME church. So what has that experience been for you?
A lot of highs and a lot of lows. Many people, maybe even in this group, are pastors' kids. That's a whole nother level. Just right there, that's a whole nother level. But in response to the skills and the talents that you have, sometimes we fail to ask what it is that people want to do, especially young people. We sometimes assume just because they're a teacher that they always want to teach and that their only skill is teaching. We tend to think that because they work in finance, that they want to continue to be in finance. And it's not that they have anything against it, but they have other skills as well. And sometimes they're not given an opportunity to use those skills. Sometimes we don't even know what those other skills are, simply because we just don't ask. We don't ask if they have another skill. We just assume that because they're a teacher, they want to teach. Because they're in finance, they want to continue to be in finance. And so sometimes I think that we just need to ask. In addition to that, as we're talking about children going off to college and then coming back and that kind of thing, and how they're still continue to be looked at as children and not as adults, that we need to form some kind of programs where we can develop and transition as they transition, that the programs transition as they transition, as people go through different stages of their lives, but they transition with them as they begin to have families, get married, have families, buy homes, those kinds of things, that they need to transition as people transition in their lives. You cannot have a program for a 12-year-old that looks exactly like a 19-year-old that looks exactly like a 32-year-old. It's just not going to work.
Thank you. So one of the things that we discussed too, and Dynasty, I'm going to start with you on this question, is so we talked about like the resources and the programs are different depending on where you are and what churches you belong to. So when we look at like, I think one of the things that COVID has allowed us to do that some of us did before, but it has enhanced it, is to actually participate and fellowship with other churches beyond our local church, beyond our conferences, and beyond our districts. So there are churches, AME churches, who are not having an issue with engaging young adults of any age, right? So they have collegiate students and they have college programs. They have people who have just recently graduated from undergraduate. That is who's actually managing a lot of their virtual worship services and have been before COVID, and then just have maximized it like during COVID. So from one of the things that AME Church has always prided ourselves on is being a connectional church. And so Dynasty, as someone who moved, to the 13th district from the 11th district, what did that feel like to you? And how did that, that connectional feel? Like, did you go to an AME church when you first moved here? Did you go to other churches and then you joined? Because my experience has been, I know a lot of friends who, when they moved to Louisville, they used to be AME. And they're like, oh, I used to be AME. I grew up AME. But they go to like other churches and other denominations. So Dynasty, if you could start us off on like, what was that feeling like to you in that transition?
Actually, I grew up AME. So I was at St. Matthew when I lived here. And then when I moved to Florida, I was still AME. And then I came back and just went back to the church that I grew up in. So the difference that I have experienced from when I left and came back, when I left, of course, the youth was very active. They still had, youth Sundays and church, things for the youth. And then when I went to Florida, it was more of, there was a lot of youth. So you had a lot, we had bowl games for conferences, Sunday school conventions. So it was a lot of youth that was around. And then when you come back as an adult to the AME, come back to a different, conference as an adult, it has been what's the word I want to say? It was very trying. And in some aspects, it's very discouraging, because when I came back, instead of embracing me as an adult It was more of, oh, did you just come back because you're pregnant? Or did you just come back because? So it was more of the fact of, why am I back, more so than, oh my gosh, it's great to see that we have another youth in our church. So that was a big discouraging moment, but it was a lot. I'll just say that.
Sister Erica, can you speak to that experience of being between different districts or witnessing different congregations?
Yes. So when I left to get my associates in Lincoln College, every college that I went to, I always taught at an AME church in the area. That was one thing I always did. And so in Lincoln College, it was only a 2-year. The church wasn't like your mega church, or it wasn't like a big church, if you will. But we were in a college town, and the pastor, I knew her because she commuted from where I lived to that area. And so she asked me would I come to a church and help, get young people there. And I did. I was able to get the college students from Lincoln College to the church every Sunday. We had about, 30 members, just college students. It may not seem like it's a lot, but that's a lot in that town. 30 members. We organized a church. Organized a choir. We organized a dance team. It was, our own, and she let us make it our own. And that was just a highlight of, being there, because that pastor opened his arms and said, hey, come here every Sunday. I got you all. And we just made that church our own. We made it into the millennial church we wanted to see. Now, when I transferred off to Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa, it was a great experience as well, because there were 2 services. So there was one service for the season on that Saturday. So if you want to go and get your good hymn in and, do your traditional service, that was fine. But that Sunday was catered to the young people. And I really enjoyed that because they understood their audience. They understood who they were catering to. They understood that, hey, we have a college town, Drake University here, that we can really attract our students. And so that church every Sunday was full of young people because of that. On Saturday, it was the older population, and on Sunday, it was the young population, and it worked. It worked until that pastor left. And that's all, it worked until that pastor left. And then when that pastor left, that fire went out. Why? Because that pastor cared, that pastor understood, and he knew his audience. When I came back home, it was really sad, because I had went from building a church essentially to go into a location where I was accepted, I was able to be around other young people, to coming back home where their gifts were accepted. So that's my experience.
Sister Rochelle, can you talk about that? You're on mute. You need to unmute yourself.
Sorry. I think for me coming, being able to serve in different districts, I agree that it's a difference. I think for me, when you go to a different church or in a different district and you see different things and you want to come back and implement them in your own church and you're excited about it. I remember saying in one district I'd seen where the choir rehearsal, at the end of it, they would go and they would bless each seat the Sunday before service. And so I thought that was very touching, and having us be a part of the worship service, and just really ensuring that God would meet us there. And so, even though you may not agree with something, I feel like if it's for young people and it's going to, push them more in the path of working in the church, then, you need to be open to doing some of the ideas that they have, as opposed to saying, we've always done it like this, or it's always worked, because that also, discourages individuals from continuing to want to work in the church. And so they start being quiet, they don't voice their opinions, and then the next thing you know, they've left and they are not an advocate for the AME church. And so I think it's being able to open them up and basically saying, come as you are. What are your area? What do you want to do? What What is the church that you attend every Sunday? What does that look like to you? And I think from that point, we start to build what's going to fit their needs. I think we've built the church around what we think the church ought to be. But I think we have to reverse our mindset and allow the congregation, the people who are attending or the ones that we want to recruit, to understand, no, this is what we need our church to be. We don't just need to go to a place to worship. We want a church that is active. We want a church that is recognizable. We want a church that supports, our efforts and our education as well into becoming a better steward of the church.
Thank you. So I call that everyone wants to be on the winning team. No, right? So we all want to be on the winning team. Like, no matter what your tradition is, no matter, like, we all used to be Chicago Bulls fans. It's a whole lot of people who used to be Chicago Bulls, who used to be Dallas Cowboys fans, right? We all want to be on a winning team, and not just as a fan, but as a participant. I mean, because that's part of what church is about. And so I want to comment on some of the things I'm seeing in the chat room. There are a lot of people asking for solutions. And so we will definitely get to the solutions, right? So this is a 2-hour discussion, but can you hear me is actually the topic and the title of this presentation. And so we can't drive solutions until we actually hear the concerns of the people who are trying to stay committed to the church. And so I think we have to first be respectful of our panelists, listen to what their concerns are, their church hurt is. And if you actually listen, they're offering solutions as well. And then we'll spend the bottom half of the afternoon talking about very specific solutions and things that we can implement within our church. So I see the chat line is active. We encourage you to continue to be active, but I do want to make sure that we do what this young group of people have asked to do to begin with is I'm speaking. And as I'm speaking, you got to listen to what I'm saying. And so I'm going to offer you and share with you what I feel. And then I'm going to offer you the solutions so that we can better drive that home in each of our churches. So Kendra, we were talking about, the differences between churches. You actually were the first person that brought that up because you talked about some churches have RAYACs, right? Some churches have RAYACs. Some churches say, just go straight into the YPD a little bit longer or join the missionary society. So what's been your experiences? Because you actually have joined churches almost because you are a pastor's daughter. So you've gotten to really see the differences in each congregation. And so what are your thoughts or experiences in that regard?
You're right. I've seen the differences on every side from being a pastor's daughter and moving around. I've seen very, very active youth groups. I've seen very inactive youth groups, and transitions not really go as well. But also having a father in ministry and leadership, I've seen more of the denomination as a whole. Like Katina said earlier, there are AME churches who are doing it, what we would say, doing it right. So it's not like the denomination as a whole is like everybody's just wrong. That's not what we're saying either. There are churches that are doing some of the things that every person in our generation would like to see on every level. Problem is, it doesn't translate well from larger cities to smaller cities. And so you kind of see that, like, I remember I went to Wilberforce University, and there was, if you know anything about Wilberforce is in the middle of nowhere. And so there was an AME church literally right up the road from the school. Wilberforce is an AME church as well, but there's an AME church right up the road from school. Everybody chose to go 20, 30 minutes to Dayton to what was considered the hip church. And honestly, the only difference was they understood their audience and the energy. Our generation is an energy-driven generation. Like, if you hype up the energy around Jesus, we'll follow it blindly, honestly. Like, if you find a way to capture, putting, this is God, and making it appeal on a level that it's the energy is high, and you feel it. And it's not necessarily, it's like what Dynasty said, it's when she came back, it was a lot of you feel attacked. And so if you send somebody into an environment where they feel welcomed. It's not about why are you here or what got you here. It's simply, I'm happy you're here. One of the churches I got to visit, that was one of the things that drew me. The very first day, from the parking lot to finding our seat, it was, I'm just genuinely glad you're here. And you felt that in the atmosphere. So if you come into church, which technically is supposed to be the hospital, if you come into a church and you feel like, okay, they're glad I'm here. The people in this environment who, for whatever reason I came, or who are supposed to help me heal in some and grow in some area, are genuinely happy that I'm here, we will stay. The other thing that I saw is a lot of other churches and organizations, they're not necessarily membership driven. And I feel like the question is, how do we keep our members? And you're asking our generation to be committed before we're connected, and you've got the wrong generation. You've got to find like our generation is super on like, how are we connected? How does this fit into my life? How does this work for me? If you can answer that question for an individual, they'll be committed. They might not come down to the altar and join your church the first 6 months, but they'll come to church every Sunday, and then they'll be like, you have a committed member before you have a committed member on paper. And I think if you stop worrying about how can we keep them, and it's because to us, it sounds like you're hoarding people. All we really want is to come to a place where we feel open and welcome and heard, and we'll keep coming back. If I go back to my grocery store analogy, like you go back to your favorite store because of the experience. It has the brands that you like. And so you don't necessarily join, like you may join their rewards, but you don't do that on the first day. You do that because I like this store, and if I sign up, the coupons, and they'll start doing things that cater to me. Stores will start stocking the shelves with things that you demand because you keep coming. We didn't get that from our churches, so we went to find it elsewhere. And if we come back with ideas and our voice isn't heard, you're not understanding the assignment.
I'd like to piggyback a little bit on what Kendra said, just in the instance that a lot of people that I talked to were voicing exactly what she said. But in addition to that, they were saying, people can't see my heart. They can't see my hurt. They can't see my pain. They can't see my struggle because my hair color is too loud, because my dress is too short, because my arms are out. They can't see me as a person because they can't get past all the physical stuff. And everything is fine. Even some people say everything is fine until I miss a Sunday or two. And then when I get back, it's like, where you been? What you been doing? How come you ain't come back? What? It's like I'm bombarded with all this stuff, which makes it easier for me not to come back.
Thank you. And so I think some of what we are describing are the things that are happening in society, right? And so I think what happens is that in the church, we think the church is like this separate entity outside of society. And so as AMEs, we know that like the AME church was founded to address some of those societal issues, right? And so our church was not only like where our spirits were fed, but it was where our obligation was to feed the needs of the community. And so we talked in the very beginning about this is a generation of activists, right? A generation of activists and who make moves. And so to be silenced anywhere is problematic. So to be silenced in a church that was built on activism and social justice is problematic. And so if we could speak to like, what are the needs? What are you all looking for in a church home? So we talked about, Black Lives Matter and some of the protests. And so it's not lost on me that we were literally founded in protest. When Richard Allen and Absalom Jones got up, they got up from a pew that they had built, and someone told them that they would not be able to pray there anymore. They got up. So what it sounds like is our millennials and young adults have gotten up because they're getting up from the pews and from the altars and from the pulpits that are judging them because of the tattoo on their arm, their age, their presumed experience, their hair is too loud, and because while they respect the mentorship and they respect the tradition, we can't keep doing the same thing because society is not the same. So can you all speak to like, what are the things that you're looking for in a church for the church to embrace? And what are the things that are societal issues that the church has chosen to bury our head in the sand and say, nope, that's not how we do it because we're AME. But yet we see other AME churches are doing it and other denominations and Zions are doing it. Rochelle, if you want to start.
Sure. I believe it was Billy Graham that said, it's my job to love. It's God's job to judge. And I think that has really been an issue, especially looking at making people of all walks of life feel welcome. It's our job to love. It's not our job to judge where their baby daddy is or how come they can't buy groceries. It's just our job to fit that need. And I think that that's one of the things that we've forgotten when I talked about, our church was founded on protest. I'm hyped. I love AME to the day I die. What do I want to see? What does my AME church look like today? My AME church looks like AME churches at the Black Lives Matter. Hey, St. Paul AME believes Black Lives Matter. My church looks like someone who's on the leadership talking about, saving Black lives and the importance of everything that goes along with it. I mean, I think we've just kind of slept on our own notoriety. We really haven't used our church in making social stances as much as we can. I remember when we went through the senseless shootings of a couple of African Americans, and finally Sandra Bland, I believe she was AME. And that's the first time I heard the AME church say anything about the whole senseless killings of African Americans. And so we have bishops. Where are they? We have leadership. Where are they? Our money goes to them. And so it's really, they need to step up. I mean, we have leadership.
Thanks, Rochelle. Dynasty or Kendra, would you all like to weigh in on that?
I'll go. As far as what we need on a big scale is honestly relatability. We need to feel valued and we need to feel like it's a safe space. Like before you talk about what kind of programs and mentorship and all that stuff, if I'm being honest with you, a lot of us see right through the facade. And so you're not going to get a good response on mentorship and things of that nature if we don't feel safe. You can't mentor someone if they don't feel safe in a place that you would feel safe. That doesn't make sense. So like our generation is really big on feeling related to.
I would just like to say for me personally, I feel that, like Kendra said, we need to feel safe. We need to be able to come to a person and say, hey, I'm dealing with this. How can I go? As young women, and like from my instance, I moved back, but my mom was not here with me when I moved back to Kentucky. Yes, I had other family members that were women that were here, but when you go to church, you want to feel love from those other members of the church and women. So you want to be able to say, hey, I'm dealing with this. How can I overcome it? What can I do to make myself feel better or to achieve what I need to do? And I'll, as a person that's big on mental health, I'll say, for example, a person that is very depressed and dealing with mental issues. I want to be able to say, hey, I'm depressed. I have these issues. Can you help me feel safe? Can you help me feel like I am going in the right direction towards God, or anything of that nature? And if I can't feel that, or I can't get that when I walk in a church, then why? I mean, what's the purpose?
Because you can't pray it away, right? Because sometimes I think, and so when you get that answer of like, oh, we're just going to pray on it. Well, sometimes you need prayer and you need counseling, and sometimes we need medication. And so to have that response, you feel like you're not being heard, and then it's not a safe place. Sister Erica and Sister Dinah, if you all could speak to that as well.
I think everyone has pretty much said what the ideal church would be. A loving church, a church where it's okay to make mistakes, right? That is okay to make a mistake and not feel like it's the end of the world. And having someone there to help and to guide you, to show you the correct way. I think a lot of times we make mistake and then we're chastised for it, or we're looked upon a different way. But just going to a church where you're accepted for who you are, no matter what they may be, because as Sister Rochelle, nobody can judge you but the Lord. Nobody can judge you but the Lord. So no matter who you are, what you may look like, being at a church where it's okay to be who you are, it's okay to make mistakes, and being a church free, and I might get in trouble for this, and that's okay. I'm here to step on toes today, and that's fine. But a church that's free of nepotism, right? We have a lot of that. And we all know that is to be true. And so everybody needs to be accepted for who they are, no matter who your parent is, no matter who your auntie, sister. We all have different gifts. And so we should not be looked over because of nepotism. And so a church that's just free and for everyone. And like I said, I know I might have told some toes with that one, but I'm just here to be real today because our church is hurting, and this is the kind of conversation that we need.
I would just like to say, in addition to what everybody else has already said, I think the safe space is really important, especially to this generation. And as other people have said, when they have questions, when they question even something about their faith, they're ostracized or criticized. When they have concerns, like whatever the issue is, mental health issues, whatever they are, they are met with criticism, or if they have confided in someone or sought out help from someone about, say, a mental health issue, then they're met the next Sunday with 10 people trying to tell them what to do, and you're still trying to figure out, how did you find out that this was going on? Like, I didn't tell you. And so everybody's coming to you with solutions about something that you confided in somebody else in, trying to get help. But now everybody knows, and everybody has their own solution. And we just have to be mindful about that, and to just listen to what it is that people want to say. People can't see past me being pregnant at 19 for me to address the issue that Black mothers are dying at a rate higher than any other mothers. They can't hear me say that because they're too concerned about me being pregnant at 19. We just have to be more, I don't even know what the word is. We have to be sincere. As somebody said, if nobody else can figure it out, this millennial can figure out fakeness in a minute. All this fake stuff, and they'll tell you in a minute, you can talk all that talk, but I don't see no action. You talk a good game, but I don't see no action. I don't see you doing anything about anything that you say is wrong, or about anything that I've asked you to address as something that's been an issue for me. You talk a good game, but I don't see no action. This generation is not about it.
And if I could piggyback off of that, I think people, and that was really good, Sister Dinah. People forget, right, that they were young once as well. They tend to forget that a lot. And so they were young, they partied, they wore the same stuff that the millennials wear, but then they find Jesus, amen. And then all of a sudden, everybody else who does that is just dead wrong. And as you were saying, real recognizes real. Okay, and I work with young people every single day. And like you said, real recognizes real. So let's not be so quick to forget that you at one time may have been a teenage parent, that you at one time did go to the club, that you at one time did do whatever that this millennial is doing that you may think is not right. That is not, your job is to understand and to help them versus gossip and talk about them and not direct them in the right path. And I think that's one of the biggest things that this church does. We are so quick to judge and forget where we came from.
So this kind of leads us into the conversation about mentorship, right? And so a lot of people have suggested, like, here's a mentorship. How do we better engage cross-generationally? And so often mentors are thought about that an older person who then mentors a younger person. And so when we think about mentorship, not everyone can be a mentor, first of all, because in order to be a mentor, you have to make time to hear, make time to listen, and then make time to go through some of those hurdles and stumbles with people, right? And then also understand and be able to understand people's different experiences. All of us come from very diverse and dynamic backgrounds, but then also be willing to change. Like, you have to have it in your heart that maybe what I thought 20 years ago and what were societal norms 20 years ago are no longer societal norms. So as we talk about like this mentorship, how do you all see, like, how does that mentorship work? If that was something that we would implement within the church, what would you be looking for in a mentor? Rochelle?
I would look for a mentor who is loving, who wants to share all the knowledge, all their successes and their failures, and training me to not take their place, but to help them. And I think that's a problem that we have in our church is that, I've been a superintendent for 25 years. You're not going to live forever. And so it's really being able to, have a member that's interested in a certain area of the church and linking them up. Maybe it's early identifying, hey, they're good at this, or that got all A's in his math class. He's interested in finance. So I think it's starting those little mentorships early, and especially our college students, when they come back, give them an area that when they come back, they're ready to work. They've seen some things. They want to do some things. And so give them that opportunity. Oh, be open and ask them, hey, what can we do here at St. Paul to take us to the next level? What can we do to recruit new members? What type of activities should we do? I think it's just being open and letting them, feel comfortable and safe and being able to volunteer in those areas. I think it's being open and not realizing that they're not coming to step on our feet or take away our position, that they're coming to help the church move forward. So I think it has to do with getting our attitude straight, and being comfortable in the skin that we're in, knowing that we're all striving for the same thing.
Anyone else want to weigh in on what you're looking for in a mentor? Kendra?
Hear me and hear me good. Not everyone should be a mentor. It's great that you're the president of so-and-so and blah, 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 but that does not qualify you to be a mentor. If you're speaking specifically for our generation, we require transparency on a level that I don't think a lot of people are genuinely comfortable with. We require our mentor to put aside their version of who they saw us to be, because your mentor should not be creating a smaller version of themselves. Your mentor is supposed to be pushing you into being authentically whoever you're supposed to be. If your mentor is the president of the Missionary Society, but you're supposed to be something else, you should not come out as a mini president of the Missionary Society just because that's who your mentor is. Like everybody, like mentoring it's a great idea. Don't get me wrong. It's a great solution. But if you don't attack it from a very thought out, prayed over, strategic way, you're going to hurt more people than you do help them. Because once we put ourselves out there and then it doesn't work, that's 10 more steps backwards. And you're going to have more issues in between. So do I think mentorship is a solution? I think it's one solution, but I think it should be approached very, very seriously and careful because, like I said, we require a level of transparency as a generation that no generation has before. Like the generations before us, not all, not everybody, don't get your feelings hurt, but a lot of people before us was very much, I heard it, it worked for them, I'm gonna go with it. That's not us. You can't tell us, well, this is why so-and-so did it and it worked for them, and we just run behind you. You're gonna have to come to us with some real evidence. We're gonna have to seriously see, okay, you did this. This is how you got out of that. Great, I can run with you on that. But to tell me that so-and-so helped you do this, but you kind of leave all the things in the gray areas, we're not gonna accept it.
Any of our other panelists want to weigh in on the mentoring?
I'd just like to say, I agree with Sister Kendra. Mentoring is a great way to do things, but it's not the only way. And I think that not only do we have to mentor people in positions in the church, but we have to mentor people in their personal lives. Like I might be the best Sunday school superintendent you ever want to see, but I can't focus on it when I got 3 kids to feed, trying to get them to dance practice and football practice and band practice. And we done had scrambled eggs and toast every night this week because that's all we got in the refrigerator. I can't focus on being the Sunday school superintendent because I've got this other stuff going on in my life. And I need somebody to mentor me to say, how do I do this? How do I handle this? How do I, get this down to where it works for me? And because, like I say, I've done something that somebody else doesn't agree with or who has offended somebody. Now they talking about how horrible of a church Sunday superintendent I am and how fast they can replace me because she can't even be there when she's supposed to be there and do half of what she's supposed to do. But nobody is concerned about anything else in my life. And so I think, as they said, everybody can't be a mentor, but we do need mentors in positions in the church, but also in personal life, real life. I got to live with this everyday issue. I need a part-time job, but I don't have a babysitter for my kids. We have other things that we have to think about. And gone are the days, for the most part, where generations live in the same household. So you like, Grandma, can you keep on little man while I go to my part-time job? Because Grandma lives 60 states away. And I'm here in this city by myself where I'm trying to figure it out. So I think we just have to be more flexible. Transparency is a big thing. I think, when I think there are a few things that turn off a millennial faster than somebody who acts like they've always been saved and they've always had it together. I don't think anything turns them off much more than that. If you can't remember the days when you was out drinking, cussing, and crawling on your belly to get home at night, but you're going to criticize me because you see me at dinner with a glass of wine, then there has to be some transparency in that situation. And as they say, everybody can't be a mentor, but we need to be, I think, more mindful about the whole person, the whole person. We need to be able to have conversations with people about the whole person and not being afraid of being judged or being afraid about what I say. If you ask me how I feel and I tell you how I feel, and then you're mad because I told you how I feel, then, we got a problem.
Sister Erica, did you want to contribute to the mentorship conversation?
No, I think everyone really laid it out. I think Sister Kendra really laid it out. Just knowing that everyone cannot be a mentor. The Bible talks about knowing your gifts and your strengths. And so you need to know that is your gift, but also know that being a mentor is very, very intentional. That is intentional work, not to be taken lightly, but also to understand that mentorship goes both ways. Like you can learn, each party in a mentorship can learn. The mentee can learn as well as the mentor, if we have the ear to listen and understand what each party is saying. I mentor youth here in Springfield all the time, and the results are remarkable, but that is because I understand them, they understand me. We come to a common denomination, and in the end, it's a win-win for everyone. So just knowing that it's very intentional work if you do decide to get into this, but also knowing that they may not follow the direction that you told them to, but this is the partnership between both parties.
So in the conversation about like mentorship, we talked a lot about like transparency, right? Transparency and being authentic. And so in the chat earlier, one of the conversations was that it's difficult to find that within the church because of people's insecurities. And so it is very difficult for people to say, I do not know. And so I think what happens is that, as our society changes, there are some issues that people are dealing with at much younger ages or in a different format than what people within the church have the capacity to have the solution for, right? And so instead of saying, I don't know, let's work through this together, or help me to understand, and maybe I can pull some resources together, we don't acknowledge it. And so we talked about, and I think that's a solution, right? Is, I work in a manufacturing company. And so one of the things that we look at is like a critical analysis. So we can say that we make the very best washer and dryer, but if we don't, intentionally try to destroy the lid and the buttons and the rotator in it, then our competitor will then make the very best washer and dryer. And I think when I look at growing churches here in Louisville, they are taking the things that we literally put in structure and in format, but just actually applying them in a more purposeful and meaningful way to a newer generation. So one of the questions that we discussed was like, where are the pastors in this? Like, do you all feel that you can like have these conversations with your pastors? And leadership is at the local level within our Zion, as well as, the lay members who, we're a very democratic church. If we actually read the discipline and understood how the church works, the power is within the lay. And so I think those are the type of things that we really need to like have at a local level, then have at a district level. And then when things come to general conference, like, are we an open and affirming church? Where do we stand on LGBTQ issues? Are we allies or are we anti? Then I think those are the type of things that this generation is saying, this is what I do every day in my life. As a chief diversity officer at the School of Medicine, I'm having these open and affirming conversations, right? So why can't I have that conversation within my congregation, within my church? So talk about like, what's that relationship like for you all at the local level with your pastors, but then also like from a connectional perspective?
I think I've always been under the leadership of pastors who have been open, who have listened. I grew up, my pastor now is Pastor Hale, and we grew up in the YPD together. And so, he is a wonderful representative of pastoral leadership who listens, who identifies what needs to be done. And so I think from that point, I've had great pastors that have been really open to young people and incorporating different things. I know with Pastor Goffin, we have Pastor Strode. And so I've been fortunate because on the other side, I'm sure someone can attest to the fact that there have been some struggles. But from my experience, they have definitely been open to doing, what do you think will bring in more youth membership? What type of programming what do we need? And so I think as long as they are open, great things will continue to happen. It's just to pull the rest of them along is probably the challenge.
Sister Dinah, I'll start with you. Up next, did you have anything to add to that?
Say me, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. I think pastors, just like any other profession, you have some good ones, you have some bad ones. You have a lot in between. I think a lot of pastors are open to listen to what you have to say. I just think there's a lower number who are willing to act on whatever the issue is. And I understand there's a lot of church politics and pastors who do tend to listen or do tend to try new things or do try to do things a new way are often accused of being cliquish with a certain membership. And so if they are perceived to be listening to young adults, then people say, oh, they just care about the young adults. They just let the young adults do whatever they want to do. They're not listening to nobody else. They just are perceived as being cliquish with the young adults or whatever group it is. And so I understand that pastors have a fine line to walk as well, even though they are shepherd of the entire congregation. I think for the most part, pastors are willing to listen. It is harder sometimes to get the congregation to go along with change. Change seems to be hard for most people. So I guess that's my comment.
Erica, would you like to weigh in?
I think locally, yes, we do have pastors like Sister Dinah and Sister Rochelle talked about who are willing to listen and even change things up. I think as you go up the ladder, that is when the problem, challenges occur, not problem, but rather challenges occur. And so the image, I believe, becomes a problem, right? So with the whole LGBTQ, I think, we already have people in our church who are associated with LGBTQ. We're allies in there. However, make it into a law, in my opinion, it's an image, right? The AME Church for so long has upheld all these different standards, traditionalism. So, who are we to change that? So I think locally, yes, but as we get up the ladder, there are people who do not want that to change because of the image and perception of the AME Church.
Kendra?
I think one of the things for me is I've been fortunate enough to, as long as I was in the AME Church, my dad was my pastor. And that was amazing on one hand, because dad will always give us the platform to do or be whoever it is we need to be. And so that was great. But on the other hand, as a pastor's daughter, you also see that it's not always up to the pastor. And if you're, as young people sitting with my friends and different people, we hear the things that you guys don't think we hear. So if you're sitting in if you feel like you have a great relationship with your pastor, but you also feel like the congregation or the other people around you aren't as supportive as, say, your pastor is, that makes you want to sit back as well. So it's definitely about relationship and the authenticity of that relationship. Because like I said, when you're comfortable and you feel safe, then you can build from there. But it's you can have a great relationship with your pastor, but you do feel the other side of that. I've been in ministries where people were like, well, he's catering to the young people. So that makes us feel like, oh, well, dang, what's wrong with that? It's okay to know your audience, but we hear and see things that a lot of people feel like we don't see, or you're trying to do it on the slide. we see through all of that. So it kind of makes us be standoffish as well. And I saw in the chat earlier, somebody was saying, our generation will tell you when you've overstepped your boundaries. That's a part of like being relational. Just be open to having relationships, and you'll know when you feel like that hand go up, like, no, stop.
Dynasty.
I agree with everybody as far as what they've said. I've had some good pastors, and I've also had some that have turned their nose up at me. I've had some that have said things to other youth that was not in a very good form. But however, through in those aspects, like some of them said, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Go ahead.
That's okay, you're fine. So one of the things too is we talk about like that relationship with the pastors, and we've talked a lot about, you know, from a millennial perspective. Kendra, one of the things that you very clearly said was the church does not cater to me. And so now I really kind of want to have a discussion about, so what do millennials bring to the church, right? Because I think that would be some of the pushback that you would get. So I'm Gen Z. And so I kind of sit between this middle of like, I'm Gen Z, raised by boomers, but spent a whole lot of time with traditionalists, and still spend a whole lot of time with traditionals. And so one of the things that like I realized is that there is this balance of how we feel, right? And how church is supposed to make you feel. It's that energy, it's that excitement, it's the love for Christ, it's the love for community, the love for one another. Like that's the premise of what Christianity is. But within church, and we always fail to forget, there's a business side to it as well, right? So there is a building that needs to be paid for. There are utilities that need to be paid for. The pastor has a salary and retirement. There are conferences and connections. And, you know, we have, as our Zion, we have colleges and universities and missions. And so like, there is a level of like, how does the church make you feel good? But how do millennials contribute to all of those other aspects of the church? And do you feel that millennials do so? And are there things that millennials can do to look at that other side of the church as well? So I'll start with Kendra, since I picked on you, because you said cater to me. So how do millennials cater to the church?
I think it's a give and take, because with one thing is like what you have to realize is with millennials, we are very relational. Like we are activists of each other. So if you come and like, we're not just going to show up and just pour in everything. We're going to see like what it is. Do I feel safe? Do I feel comfortable? And then we'll show up and give you whatever it is we have. Like I said, like I am heavily into dance. I'm not going to just walk into a ministry, even if you know that I'm into dance. I'm not just going to be like, hey, here you go. Because we've seen people like older than us, younger than us, like their gifts and their talents and different things. We've seen that be abused, and we've seen it not really hold value and weight. So we're very much relational. Like if you come and you show us like, hey, we're open to what you bring, we'll help you. Like when I think it was Erica was saying like the whole thing about cell phone classes and how to usher those before us into today's society. We do this with our eyes closed. But if we come in something and we feel like you're butting heads with us just because of our age, we're gonna just back down. So I feel like if you're gonna have to kind of go above and beyond to make us feel welcome and just open, and not necessarily that like you're pushing stuff off on us. Like if you make us show us that our voice is valuable and valued, we'll pour into and we'll be connected.
I received a text message for clarity, I'm Generation X, just so you guys know, 44, okay? So I'm Generation X. So, but Rochelle, can you talk about, like, from your perspective and interacting with millennials, like, how can millennials, participate and engage within the church so that it's not, what can you do for me? But it is a mutual relationship, Kendra, to that point, right? It's a relationship. It's give and take on both sides.
I think in working with millennials, as I said in the beginning, they are different. They are a different generation, and transparency is at the forefront. I think when what benefits do millennials bring? Will they bring to the AME Church? They will bring transparency. They will bring, they do things differently. They have a shorter way of getting to the, what's the word I'm trying to say? They will help us not alleviate tradition, but kind of streamline it so it doesn't get caught in the crossfire, so that they feel like that they have a voice, that they are bringing something to the table, that this is the denomination that will listen to them. This is the denomination that was founded upon activism. And I think, again, it's taking a look at the AME brand from a marketing perspective, and then being able to translate that in its offering to millennials, but definitely as a safe place. I mean, the more open and loving we are, we talked about the LGBTQ community, they just want to be loved. And so I think when they see, they'll know that we are Christians by our love. And I think the more that we are in the community, showing our love, showing our commitment, then those are things that are going to be attractive to millennials. So number one, that they feel safe. Number two, that you're giving them a voice, a platform. You're giving them the opportunity to be mentors to your youth in the church. And so I think it's really welcoming them with open arms and finding out, what role do you want to play? We had a student come in and say, hey, we noticed that we don't have any Christian concerts here at the university. We've had, X number amount of performers or rappers, but what about a Christian concert? That's something that I had to take a look at and say, hey, we have just as many Christian students as we do, with the other genres of music. And so creating atmosphere where they're going to be comfortable, where they feel that they can share their ideas and make their voices heard, and that they will be accepted for it and appreciated. And so I think those are the type of things that we need to look at, and, just making them feel welcome, whether they do have pink hair or black nails, or, that's not important. As we're looking at their heart, and we're not looking at it to add another notch under our belt as membership, but it's really, like Kendra said, making them feel like a member before we actually take them across the finish line.
So Sister Erica, what, from your perspective, can millennials bring to the church?
Millennials, I like what Sister Rochelle talked about, the marketing piece. A lot of times you find out that a lot of people have left, a lot of our millennials have left because, it's just not appeasing anymore. So they go somewhere that's more appeasing. And so we can help market the AME Church. When I was younger, I would love to talk about the AME Church because people didn't know what it was. They was like, what is that? What's AME? I'm like, let me tell you, this AME is the first Black church in America. We got this, and that. And I was just excited. Like, I was always excited to talk about the AME Church. You don't find that anymore. You don't find that anymore. So just bringing back that excitement, bringing back that momentum, and begin to market our church in a different light so that everyone knows that the AME Church is special. It is a special church, and it helps to produce a lot of great and influential people. So I think just having that energy, as Sister Kendra talked about, that energy and being able to go out and market to different audiences, but having people in the church receptive of, once we get these new audience in our church receptive, because we were able to go out there and be excited about the AME Church and what it has to offer. So, just demonstrating that, the marketing piece, being meaningful. Like when I'm locally in my AME Church, I always find different things, church, that we could partner with, whether it be, let's hold a summer camp with this group over here. Meaningful things, not just things to say we did it. I'm tired of donating money. I want to do hands-on things. We're missionaries. Let's do hands-on things. So let's do meaningful. That's what in millennial people is meaningful and hands-on work. We get tired of donations. We get tired of money. We want to do things that are going to be like gratifying in that moment. In that moment, we want to see the fruit of our labor. So I think those are things that millennials do bring to the table, is that we could bring to the table, to be marketing, having the energy, and just showing people our excitement, but also having that meaningful relationship and bringing partnerships to the table.
Sister Dinah?
In addition to the things that have been shared, I do think it's very important, the relationship part of it is very important. I think most of us have heard the quote that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And we have to be sincere in the relationships that we form with the millennials. I think the millennials bring a lot. I think they bring excitement, energy, honesty, transparency, and they expect those things of others as well. Millennials are the type that can, hype it up and pump it up, and on all platforms of social media have, 200 people here right now, but they also know how to shut it down real quick. They are the type that walk away from you in mid-sentence. You talking some nonsense, baby, we can shut this down right now and walk away in mid-sentence, be done. Don't mean to hurt your feelings, but I got to go. I don't have time for this. And so they bring that to us. And those are things that are positive things and things that can help the church if we look at it in a helpful way. Because we want to turn it around and say, oh, they don't listen to nobody. Oh, they don't care what we got to say. Oh, they're not going to do anything. They're not committed. But we failed to listen to them and form a relationship with them. And I think the millennials bring that to the church.
And Sister Dynasty, are you still with us, or did you have to leave? I want to give you an opportunity if you're still here.
No, I'm still here. Go ahead.
No, I just also wanted to say, I think it was effective. I forget what presiding elder I did this for, but we created a whole marketing plan, not just for youth interaction and youth recruitment, but for the whole church as a whole. And so it was where each minister was basically doing the same thing to encourage, to incite, to recruit, because we are on the same page. And so I think that would be a good way of kind of addressing all of our needs if we could have almost like a marketing package for each minister. On this Sunday, it's going to be Youth Sunday. On this Sunday, we're going to welcome single parents. Something that is constantly getting the church new members coming, because it's word of mouth. If I'm a single mother and, I love my church, they love my baby, they've given me support, it's the word of mouth, but you got to bring them in somehow. And I think that would be a good tool to recruit through.
And I forgot who it was who mentioned innovativeness, but like Sister Rochelle was saying, you got to get them in. I remember when I was member at large for the Connectional Church, we had fresh fire. We had the red heels and the white tops. And I mean, something so simple as that, but it got the ages 21 to 40 excited about coming to church because they had their fresh fire on. They had their red heels, their blue jeans, and their white tops. And that was something that was continued for 4 years, but it built momentum and excited people about coming to church.
So I think as we prepare to kind of wrap up the discussion, there were a couple of things, like, so if we did a word cloud about the conversation that we had, right, throughout the day, there were things that definitely kind of stood out. And so in my notes, I wrote different. This is a different generation. And so while we love the tradition of our church and our Zion and the history of which we were founded on, I think we would all agree that the church has to be different. And different in a way, not that we, you know, don't continue to serve the Lord and, you know, live a Christian lifestyle, but how we execute that has to be different. Transparent, being transparent in ourselves as individuals, but ourselves as a Zion and as a church, right? Transparent in that, you know, we've got some gaps and we have some opportunities. And so we don't know the answers to everything, but we're open to have the conversation. We're willing to hear. We're willing to let everyone speak. Excitement, that we need to be excited about our love for the Lord, excited about our Zion, excited about our differences, right? Excited about the differences that exist within our congregation. Meaning, that we should have meaning. So the church is no longer transactional. You show up on Sunday, go to Sunday school, you go to worship service, you pay your tithes, you pay your conference claims. We'll see you next Sunday, maybe in Bible study, right? But that we are engaging not only the members of our Zion, but our communities, because that is how we welcome people into the church. And Kendra, you mentioned it. People may become a member before they formally tell you, I'm a member. Sister Dinah, that was your personal experience, right? You worshiped and fellowship for 8 years before you said, I'm in, I'm sold, I'm here. And then also the relationships. So that is the ultimate essence of a connectional church, is that when we meet people, whether they are from South Africa, India, Texas, Kentucky, the 4th district, the 5th district, or the 2nd district, we probably know the Chautauqua. We know that WMS is Women's Missionary Society. It is our fraternal and our sororital like bond that we have together that comes together within the Zion. And then one of the things that we did not mention, but was blatantly obvious when I was asked to do the panel, and then as we look at the faces on the panel, there are no men present. This is a conversation that we had amongst women. On one hand, it was because it was hosted by the Missionary Society. But as the church changes, we know that we have men who are now supervisors of the Missionary Society, because we have a Zion that has female bishops. And so I would encourage us that as we start to have more of these conversations and drive some more of these solutions, that we make sure that we are diverse in that aspect as well. Because if we are honest, one of the questions was, have you considered leaving the church, and what makes you consider leaving the church? Because if I'm looking for a single man, I may not find him in my church. Or if I'm looking for a partner of any, right? I may not find them in the church. Because if they are as radical and activist and engaging as what I expect for them to be, they may not be in my church right now. They may be someplace else. They not be in a church home, because they too have left the church and their protest is in a different space, in the boardroom or in the streets as part of Black Lives Matter or other social organizations. So those are all things that I want us to definitely consider. And so I want to give each of our panelists an opportunity to have some final words and some final thoughts, and then we'll come back and wrap it up, and we'll ask the leadership of our Missionary Society to close us out. So Sister Rochelle, we'll start with you.
I think it's just a blessing to have this opportunity for us to be on one accord and to figure out what we need to do to ensure that my grandchild will have the opportunity to grow up and experience the AME Church as I have. I do love the AME Church. I am concerned about its endurance, and this has brought us together. Just being on one accord and being able to speak our differences and our truths. I think church hurt is the worst hurt. And so if there's anything that I could leave it just in knowing that what you say does matter. People do hear you. And so as we go forward, just to go forward in love, you may not understand them. You may not like the way they look, but God loves all of us and he looks beyond all of that. And so if those were my last words, it would be, if you want to recruit new members in the church, then be the person that they can see Christ through you, and they will want to know more.
Kendra?
I guess my last words would be open and transparent. Definitely be open to change. It's not going to look like what it's always looked like. That doesn't mean that you're drifting away from God, but just be open to the fact that the generation that you're looking for does not look like you. They're not going to worship like you. They're not going to have the same likes like you, but that's okay. That doesn't mean that what got you through is not going to get them through. It's just a different vehicle. We're not all driving the same cars. My dad's first car was not my first car. That doesn't mean it didn't serve the same purpose, but they were just different because there were different needs that needed to be met. As you grow, you should change. It doesn't make sense that we require change in every aspect of our lives, but our churches. And I'm just happy to be a part of a generation who requires change in all aspects of our lives. We're not trying to be disrespectful. We love you guys genuinely, but we require to be in spaces that allow us to be who we are, regardless of if it's at home or anywhere else. We grew up code switching and realizing like, this is my church face and this is my school face and this is my home face. But our generation is like, this is me. This is who I am at church. This is who I am at school. This is who I am in the middle of Target. Like, if you can't accept us for being who we are holistically, then you're always going to butt heads. So just be open to change.
Thank you. Dynasty.
My last word would be simply acceptance. Accept the millennials. Accept them as they are coming into the church. Don't discourage them. Don't send them off. Take them under your wing and say, hey, this is how things are working. This is how things are progressing. This is it. Don't discourage them, but be open to everything that they have and what they bring forth to the table. And another thing is support. The biggest thing is support. If you see a young adult trying to host something within the church, or support them. Don't just sit back and talk about them. Support them. Because why? Because that's what brings more adults in, and that's what the younger generation that are younger than me can look up to and say, hey, they did some awesome things. So when they get our age, they won't be like, oh, that church, I don't want to go to it. But so support and accept. Those are my two biggest things that I leave.
Erica?
I guess as we look around, we see that the world is changing. And so ultimately enough, that means our churches are changing. And I believe everyone on the panel has already said it, accept people for who they are. We're not asking you to change overnight because, we know that that's not going to happen. But now that we have had this discussion, don't let this just be a discussion. We have to act on it. We have to move on it. Because, we have these discussions all the time, and, the answers are always the same. People want change, but that change must occur within each person who will expect that change happen within their local churches. So I think, like Nike says, just do it. It's time. The time is now. And MLK said it best. The time is always right to do what's right. And the right thing right now is to come in here and accept our young people for who they are, embrace them, so that we can begin to have that excitement back about our great Zion, the momentum to get young people back into the church, and not when they're 40 years old they come back, but keep them in church. So the time is now, and we have to just do it.
Sister Dinah?
I'd just like to agree with what's already been said, but lastly, I'd just like to say that we do have to be open and encouraging of our young people. We have to be genuine. We have to mentor, if that's the word you want to use, mentor them in church policy and organization, but we also have to also be willing to mentor them in their personal life and have programs that change and adjust as their lives change and adjust. And I think the young people will want us to know that they love God, that they love the church, that they love the people of the church. Just because I don't agree with the way you do it or the style you do it, young people are still saying, I love God. I still read my Bible. I still pray. I still crave a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I just don't do it like you do it. And so I think that we definitely have to be encouraging. There's enough room for all of us to grow, young, old, everybody in between. And there's enough work to do for all of us to be involved. We can accomplish more together than we can apart.
Thank you. And I just want to end on this thought. Last week, and I believe this weekend as well, we celebrate the life and legacy of Supervisor Stan McKenzie. And so Dr. Roderick Beelan, one of my friends, fraternity brothers, and leaders within our Zion, said this at the ceremony. He said he attended an event and Supervisor Stan was there. And so all the dignitaries of the church were sitting in this space where Supervisor Stan was. And so when Roderick walked in, Dr. Beelan walked in, Supervisor Stan asked some other people to move over and make room so that this young, bright, soon-to-be Dr. Beelan could have a seat. And so then when he sat there together, he said, so now I've made room for you. Now I want to make sure that they hear what you have to say. And so he introduced Dr. Beelan and said, this is Roderick Beelan, and he is bright, and he is the future of our church, the future of our Zion. And we need to listen and hear what he has to say. And so I think that was so fitting that as we celebrate that life and talk about, like, as our generations move through, and in order to continue our love for the AME Church, our memberships for the AME Church, that we need people like Supervisor Stan, who are older generations, who people who have been those mentors for us, to make space for us, make room for us, and then allow our voices to be heard, because we are speaking. And so thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you to the Kentucky Conference Women's Missionary Society for allowing us to be able to present. Thank you for asking me to moderate. So we appreciate everyone for participating. And so we do hope that, as Erica said, that this is just not a conversation, that it's time that we make a move on it. But I also hope that we do so together, that we move on all of it together for the betterment of our church and for society and the Christian faith. Thank you. I think we'll now have closing remarks by Sister Melinda Robinson, followed by Sister Adero Jones, and then Sister Latanya Germany.
I just wanted to say thank you guys for taking the time out and being a part of this program. I'm very short and sweet to the point, so thank you guys.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I want to thank all who tuned in for this much needed discussion. I pray that we all have heard them speaking and that we will look inward and will respond accordingly. I also want to thank Sister Katina Whitlock for your professionalism and for saying yes. To the Kentucky Conference leadership, our first Vice President, Sister Veda, this could not have happened without you. Thank you very much. And to our dynamic president, Sister Latanya, your leadership is why this is going on. So again, I say thank you to everyone who participated, the panelists. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Yes, ma'am.
An elder to the leadership of the West Kentucky oh my goodness, Kentucky Conference. Oh, so much. When I think Mika Wingate brought this to us and said that the young people want to have this discussion. And I said to Mika, well, let's do it. And then I sent Mika something back and said, I'm speaking, do you hear me? And she said, oh, this is what and I said, well, let's use it. And then the person that I thought, I said, let me see if Katina Whitlock could be our moderator. Katina, thank you so much. Katina has always been, and Latoya have always been young people of integrity, and they have always spoke their mind, not in a negative way, but they've always were able to speak their mind. And so listening to this, I hope that we can bottle this conversation, the whole conversation up and take it. And I'm glad that it was being recorded because I really do feel like that our leadership and our pastors really need to hear the dialogue that's going on today. It's been awesome. And General Officer John Thomas was on here. Is he still here with us? Because I really don't want to overlook anyone. Does anybody know? But anyway, because I think, and just like in Erica has came up through the ranks of the YPD and it was an awesome leader. And so for you all to come and to be a part, thank you all so much. To Dynasty, a young mother that's coming up in the church, you know, thank you so much for the sacrifices that you're making. Going to the general conference and taking off from work. And we just think that people, you know, is expected to do all these things, but we have to keep in mind that these are young women that do have jobs, that are in leadership positions. And so it's just been a great day, you all. I tell you, Reverend Hill, thank you so much for always coming in and helping us out. We really do appreciate you. To the best First Vice President ever, Veda Shelton. Veda, thank you so much for all that you do. I don't do much. You all just make me look good by being the president. But you all, you come to me, you say, this is what we want to happen, and you all execute it in a manner that I think we, like I said, to bottle this whole conversation up, pastors, presiding elders, so that not only can we have this workshop again, but also we can build on it. Rochelle, thank you so much. Miss Dinah Johnson, thank you so much for being a part. And I mean, everybody, I was just with, just have to say thank you. It's really been a good day. It really has. But Presiding Elder Golphin, Presiding Elder Hale, you all are on here, and if you all would like to speak, please do.
I will certainly allow the senior presiding elder to have a word on my behalf.
Okay. And then Reverend Golphin, when you do, I didn't know I would. When you do, would you close us out in prayer?
Thank you. On behalf of the presiding elders who are present and all of the clergy who are present, I want to thank you, President Germany. I want to thank you, Moderator Whitlock. I want to thank you, all of you who are responsible for putting on this presentation. My personal presence on being here today was twofold. One, of course, I'm going to be on to support my daughter, but two, hearing the concerns and hearing the thoughts of our young adults. It is something that is very important to the church that young adults are being heard and that we know how to reach and how to be productive with this demographic. There's a lot of assumptions that have been made, but I think you cleared up some of the things. And the only thing I encourage you to do is just stay with it. Don't let it end with this today, but stay with it. Implementation becomes very important. Have these honest discussions with the leadership of your congregations, both the pastors and the lay leadership. And even though sometimes it may seem like you're talking to a brick walls can fall if they're talked to hard enough. So thank you all for this presentation. Thank you all of those who were persons who participated in the panel, for all of those who participated as far as devotions and everything, but especially for those who came and listened today. It is more the fact that people listened. Sometimes you miss being said by trying to interject yourself into what's going on. So thank you for listening. And I pray that you take what has been said and use it to the benefit of God through your local congregations. If all hearts and minds are clear.
Reverend Goffin, before you do, Kendra Goffin.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much, sweetie, because I tell you, Kendra, you always, every time I see you, you always give me some insight on what's going on or what's not going on. So thank you so much for your honesty, because I tell you, if it's one child that's honest, Reverend Goffin, it's Kendra.
Well, thank you. She is very honest. She is very honest and very eloquent in speech. And that's one of the things I've always appreciated about her. All right. Did you want to do the missionary benediction, or you just wanted me to offer a prayer?
I would love for you to offer us a prayer, and then we can do the missionary benediction, please.
Sounds very good. Let us pray. Gracious God, you are the one who equips us. You are the one who directs us. You are the one who empowers us to show forth your glory to the rest of the world. We thank you, Lord, for this opportunity of sharing, this opportunity of presence, this opportunity of hearing, this opportunity of learning. And we seek, Lord, that it does not go out void, but that what has been presented this afternoon on your behalf through your servants may be used, Lord, to lift your kingdom and to share your love and your glory with the rest of the world. We pray your blessings upon all who have participated this afternoon, all who were present this afternoon, that you would empower and encourage them to keep on in kingdom building, to keep on being your disciples the way that you have called them to be, in what various area you are using them. We ask that you dismiss us from this meeting, but never from your presence. For the graces of your joy, your love, your peace, and your prosperity, we pray through Christ. Amen. In the mission, the triune God, may the spirit of Christian
mission into every heart.
This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you.